10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 71. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 71 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. My name is Nick Manella. If you are new to the show, what we try to do is give you a little short and concise, around 10-minute jazz lesson every single week. And we also give away completely free PDFs every single week. And you can find those by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson.com. So today we're going to get back into the blues. You guys know I love using the blues as a vehicle for learning a ton of other improvisational concepts. So today we're going to talk about moving beyond the blues scale. Now, the blues scale is a thing that I think we all learn, maybe in school, where an inexperienced educator is kind of telling us to just use one scale over the entire blues progression. The blues scale is awesome. There's so many merits to the blues scale, but I want to talk about moving beyond it a little bit because that's what this show is all about, expanding your horizons into things that you don't use that you would like to start using to make your playing sound different and better. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's think about the blues scale for a second. Think about the first chord in a blues, all right? So today we're going to be talking about a C concert blues. So the first chord in a C concert blues would be C7, C dominant, right? So let's think about what the blues scale would be. So the blues scale would be 1, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, 5, flat 7, 1. So think about that in your head, what that is over C, right? C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, and C. Now, what I prefer to teach, if I am teaching something that's centered around the blues scale, I actually prefer not to use the tried and true blues scale. What I like to teach is the minor pentatonic. So all we're going to do with that, the only difference between that and the regular blues scale is to take that sharp 4 out of there. So that leaves us with C, E flat, F, G, B flat, and C. 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. So the scale that we're going to be taking a look at today is best related to the minor pentatonic scale, because really all that we're doing is we're taking a minor pentatonic scale and we're going to add a note to it. That's really going to help us over the blues progression. So when we think about the minor pentatonic, one of the issues with it is that a dominant chord, a 7th chord, is really a major chord, right, with a flat 7. The problem that I see with learning the minor pentatonic scale is that we're completely ignoring the major third. And this goes to, we're moving a little bit past just using one scale over the entire blues, right? So this works to tell a young student or a really inexperienced student, just use this one scale. Because if you think about that minor third, that's going to help when we get to the 4 chord, because we're going to be playing the minor third, which becomes the flat 7 on the 4 chord. So it's a really great thing to teach to a inexperienced student so that they could just have one scale and then it's off to the races. Hopefully the people listening to the show are starting to get a little bit more advanced. So we're going to talk about adding the major third to that minor pentatonic scale. And what we get is what we call a Mixolydian sharp 9 chord scale. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to take that scale, add the major third to it. So now we have 1, flat 3, major 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. Now, I know I've been calling the second note the minor third, but let's start thinking about that as the sharp 9 instead, because that's really what it is over a dominant chord. The sharp 9 is the tension we're using, not the minor third. But it just makes it easier to explain right off the bat to call it the minor third. Okay? So let's rename that scale. What we're going to use is 1, sharp 9, 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. This is going to sound, obviously, very different than using just the regular minor pentatonic scale or blues scale, whichever way you think about it. Here's what that scale sounds like. Notice the difference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the regular minor pentatonic first, and then I'm going to use this Mixolydian sharp 9 chord scale right after it, and I want you to notice the difference. Really hear that major third in the second scale as opposed to it being absent in the first scale. Here's what it sounds like. So you can hear that it adds a whole nother dimension to that kind of bluesy sounding scale by adding the major third. So we want to reflect in our playing that we are in fact playing over major chords in the blues, right? I mean, the majority of chords in the blues are major chords, so why leave the major third out? It's such a melodic note. As you know from past episodes and other lessons that I've put out, it's one of the guide tones. It's one of the notes that really defines the chord. So we don't want to avoid it. We want to sort of embrace it. So the other thing that you're going to have to do when you start using the scale is that you can't just use this one scale over the entire blues. When the chord changes, you have to actually change the scale that you're using, which is sort of the next step in anybody's musical development when they're playing over any tune, is to stop using just one bass scale over an entire tune and actually start changing the scales that you're playing to reflect when the chords change. Okay? So therefore, the second example on the sheet that I've provided for you is the same scale over the 4 chord, because those are really the two places that you're going to want to use these scales, over the 1 chord and over the 4 chord. Then when you get later in the progression to the turnaround to the 2-5-1, there's a lot of other stuff you can be doing. I wouldn't concern yourself with the scale over those chords. But over the 1 chord and the 4 chord, these scales are fantastic. But that requires you to know exactly where you are in the progression. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is a little bit of a demonstration over a blues using these exact chord scales, right? So this is a concert C blues, and I'm going to use these Mixolydian sharp 9 chord scales over the 1 and the 4 chord. Let's check out how they sound. Really try to fish your ears for that major third, because that's really going to be the difference between this and, like I said, the blues scale or the minor pentatonic scale, which so many people use over this. All right? So here's a demonstration of the C concert blues using the Mixolydian sharp 9 chord scales. So it adds a very different dimension from just using that plain blues scale, and it does require you to have knowledge of where you are in the form. So all those things kind of come together to provide a much different sound than just using the blues scale. So this would be a great thing to use with young students that you feel like are ready to take that next step take that next leap into actually now following the changes instead of just one blanket scale for the entire form. This could be a great next step for you if you're trying to make that leap into, okay, I'm really trying to follow the changes, but I'm very used to the blues scale. So let's do something that's very close to the blues scale. It's useful in a lot of different ways. And you'll hear that I definitely didn't use that scale over the 2/5. I just used some of my 2/5/1 vocabulary over that part of the form. But I think this could really open up a lot of new things for a lot of people out there. So give it a shot. Now, next week in part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to take the same scale and alter another note to take it one step further and give us even a different sound using this same kind of concept. So that's it for this week. If you've got any questions about the episode, please send them to 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please go on iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. That really helps us out in the rankings of the shows, and we're really trying to get this show to #1 in jazz instruction podcasts. So if you don't mind, take 5 seconds, go and rate and review the podcast. We'd really appreciate it. All right, everybody, we will see you on Monday with Motivation Monday, and then see you next week with part 2 of this series. Have a great one.